The world often teaches us that safety lies in the certainty of a firm grip, in what we can measure, manage, and force into submission. We are conditioned to believe that if we do not fight, chase, and hold on tight, everything will fall apart. But what if the deepest rest, the most profound peace, is found not in holding on, but in the gentle act of letting go? What if the universe is not a randomness to be tamed, but a vast, intelligent flow to be trusted? This search for certainty through control is the very friction that keeps the mind awake and anxious, pushing against the infinite nature of change. Welcome to Lotus Whisper. Tonight we begin a long, gentle journey into the heart of Buddhist wisdom, exploring the truths of karma, no-self, and interbeing. We are seeking an understanding that transcends the frantic need to control, a quiet alignment that allows life to unfold through us, rather than against us. We will learn to see that the true safety we crave is not out there, fixed in place, but alive and moving within the rhythm of impermanence itself. We invite the wisdom of the ancient monasteries to wash over the busy mind. Allow the need to fix, plan, or solve to simply dissolve into the quiet air around you. Let the gentle stories and reflections settle you down, breath by breath, thought by thought. If this path of deep, reflective rest calls to your spirit, please subscribe to the channel to hear more wisdom from the stillness. For now, simply listen, breathe, and rest in the embrace of the unfolding night. The fragile architecture of control. Our journey into quiet understanding begins with the great unspoken tension that most of us carry, the tension of the grip. It is the subtle yet powerful clenching in the heart, the faint tightening in the jaw, the shallow shortness of the breath. This grip is our attempt to build a fragile, temporary architecture of control atop the vast, moving ocean of life. We spend our days as tireless builders of this structure. We meticulously measure, plan, secure, and predict. We arrange the stones of our path. Moment longer, the breath rebels. It becomes choppy, self-conscious, and strained. The effort to control a natural process only introduces suffering, or dukkha. But when you simply let the breath breathe itself, it finds its own rhythm, deep, gentle, and utterly sustaining. The same is true of the mind. When we try to control our thoughts, demanding that they be positive, productive, or quiet, the mind erupts in a riot of internal noise. This internal struggle, this demanding of the mind to be anything other than what it is the very essence of craving. And the Buddha's first teaching was precisely this: craving, or tanha, is the root of suffering. We often think of craving only in grand dramatic terms, craving wealth, craving power, craving fame. But the craving that keeps us restless at night is far more subtle, more intimate. It is the craving for things to be other than they are. It is the craving for the difficult conversation you had today to have gone differently. It is the craving for the weather outside your window to be better. It is the craving for your body to feel more rested, right now, in this very moment. It is the craving for your own mind to stop producing that recurring loop of worry. This quiet, insistent longing for something other than present reality is the energy that fuels the fragile architecture of control. It causes us to lean forward into the future, attempting to grasp what is not yet here, or to lean backward into the past, trying to re-edit what is already gone. But reality exists only as a perfect, complete, unfolding moment. When we lean out of the present, we lose our balance. We become dizzy with possibility and regret. Imagine a small boat on a vast, gentle lake. When the boat is guided by the skillful sailor, they do not fight the wind or the current. They work with it. They adjust the sail, feeling the nuances of the flow, allowing the lake to carry them. The boat is in a state of flow, and the sailor is at peace. Now, imagine the anxious sailor, afraid of the immensity of the lake. They try to paddle against the current with all their strength, terrified that if they stop forcing movement, they will drift into chaos. Changes. The worry changes. The difficult circumstance changes. The anxiety changes. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is permanent, and therefore no single state of suffering can last. The moment we truly accept that this moment, with all its challenges and its gifts, is a wave that is already passing, we stop needing to control it. The architecture of control crumbles, but instead of chaos, we find ourselves standing on the solid ground of the present. This is the great exchange. We trade the illusion of control, which brings anxiety, for the reality of presence, which brings profound peace. The wisdom here is deceptively simple. The only thing we truly have is this breath, this sound, this moment. Everything else is a phantom, a story, a memory, or a projection. To rest in presence is to become quiet enough to hear the gentle truth whispered by the universe. You do not have to hold it all together. You are already held. The effort to control is an effort to stop the flow of life. It's like standing in a mountain stream and trying to hold all the water still. You cannot. The water will rush around your feet, and your effort will only make you stumble. But if you relax, root yourself, and allow the water to flow past, the stream will polish the stones around you and refresh the banks. You become a steady witness to the flow, rather than an anxious resistor of it. What is it that you are trying to control right now? Is it your reputation? Is it the timeline of a project? Is it the feeling in your chest? Just gently name it in your mind, and then offer it the phrase, "I do not need to hold this tight." The tight grip of control is rooted in fear. We fear the unknown. We fear change. We fear loss. This fear projects a future we must avoid, and then tasks the present moment with building an impossible defense against it. But fear itself is just another passing thought, another wave in the ocean of consciousness. It has no substance. It only gains power when we mistake it for reality and try to fight it. If you can, feel the weight of your body settling into the mattress or the chair beneath you. Note you simply refuse to give it your sustaining attention. You are the awareness that witnesses the builders and the crumbling walls. You are the quiet lake, untouched by the boat passing over it. Rest in that vast, open, and utterly peaceful awareness. Let the need to fix, manage, or control this night's rest simply fall away. There is nowhere to go, nothing to do, and nothing to hold on to. The architecture is dissolving. The structure is softening. Let the peace of the present moment rush into the space that control once occupied. This is the gentlest path to freedom. This is the first step in deep alignment. The conversation of karma. As the architecture of control begins to soften, we find ourselves standing in a new landscape, one that is governed not by rigid rules but by flow and consequence. This landscape is called karma. In the hurried world, karma is often misunderstood as a cosmic ledger, a system of punishment and reward managed by some distant accountant. We treat it like an external force. If something bad happens, we believe we are being punished for a past mistake. If something good happens, we feel we have earned a reward. This transactional, almost fearful view of karma is a remnant of the controlling mind, trying to extend its grip into the realm of spiritual physics. But in the deep, quiet wisdom of the Buddhist teaching, karma is far more intimate, more beautiful, and far more gentle. Karma is not a judgment on you. It is an energy that flows through you. It is not an external decree, but an internal conversation. The true meaning of the word karma is action or deed, but the Buddha clarified that the most powerful karma springs from volition, from the intention, the will, the subtle movement of mind that precedes any action. Karma is not what you did, but why you did it. It is the energy of the seed, not just the fruit. Imagine yourself making a cup of tea. If your intention is hurried, stressed, and distracted, thinking about the 1,000 things you have to do next, the entire process is infused with that restless energy. The water boils quickly, perhaps slopping, grasping. Then the external world will inevitably reflect back experiences that evoke fear, separation, and grasping. You are moving through the world with a tight fist, and the world is simply holding its hands up in defense. If your intention, however, is rooted in generosity, compassion, and open-heartedness, then the external world begins to meet you with the same energy. You are moving through the world with an open hand, and the world finds it safe to place its gifts there. The work of a Zen master, then, is not to meticulously catalog their actions, but to purify the spring of volition. They ask in every small moment, what is the intention animating this breath, this thought, this word? This brings us to the profound intimacy of small karma. We often overlook the tiny, recurring karmic loops that shape our reality, focusing instead on dramatic, once-in-a-lifetime events. What about the intention behind the way you walk through a doorway? Are you rushing, pushing, slightly impatient with the frame itself? What about the intention behind the first thought you have when you wake up? Is it a sigh of dread or a silent, gentle acknowledgement of a new day? What about the intention behind the way you put your belongings away? Is it resentful tidiness or a quiet act of care for your space? These small, habitual intentions are the true loom upon which your life is woven. They are the thousands of tiny, energetic deposits you make every single day. A life of alignment is built not on grand, heroic gestures, but on the relentless sincerity of these small movements of mind. Zen teachers often use stories to shift our focus from external rules to internal reality. Consider the well-known story of Hyakujo and the fox. A revered Zen master, Hyakujo, was teaching his students one day when a very old man, whom they had never seen before, joined the gathering. The old man listened intently, but when the others left, he lingered. He approached Hyakujo and confessed that he was not a human, but the spirit of a fox who had been living near the monastery for 500 generations. He explained his predicament. 500 lifetimes ago, he had been a master himself. But when asked the question, does an enlightened person still fall into the law of cause and effect?
The room. What is the profound difference between the two statements? The first answer, does not fall into the law of cause and effect, is the answer of the ego. It craves separation, believing that once enlightened, one is somehow magically exempt from the consequences of one's actions. It is a subtle claim of control, an attempt to stand outside the universal flow. This mind, seeking to be above karma, became trapped by its own willful separation, bound by the suffering of being a fox. The second answer is not ignorant of the law of cause and effect, is the answer of pure awareness. It accepts the reality of the flow completely. The enlightened person does not transcend cause and effect, they embody it with full awareness. They know that every action, every intention is a seed that will bear fruit. Knowing this, they naturally plant seeds of love, clarity, and peace. They do not cling to the fruit, but they are exquisitely careful about the seed. This is the shift from a fearful, rule-bound concept of karma to an intimate, conscious conversation with reality. The enlightened mind is perfectly aligned. It does not try to escape the law of consequence. It consciously, willingly works within the law, knowing that freedom lies not in breaking the rules of the universe, but in understanding them so completely that one's actions naturally lead to peace. We are all the old man. We are all bound by the belief that we can somehow escape the consequences of our own inner state. We try to be anxious and also experience peace. We try to be judgmental and also receive love. The universe in its perfection simply reflects back the energy we send out. The practice, then, is to become exquisitely sensitive to our own energy. When you are quiet, lying still, you can begin to feel the subtle residue of your day. Is there a hum of unresolved tension in your shoulders? That is the karmic energy of rushing and resistance. Is there a tightness in your chest from an argument? That is the karmic energy of separation and clinging to being right. Is there a gentle, quiet settling in your whole body? That is the honestly to the energy we are generating. When we shift the inner energy, the outer conversation must, by the law of karma, align itself to the new frequency. Let your resting now be an act of profound, intentional peace. Let your volition be one of release, one of deep trust, that you are held not by what you control, but by the perfect, responsive flow of cause and effect. You are the master jeweler of your own mind, examining the brilliance and the flaws of every intention before you set it into the metal of action. The empty river, journey to no self. If the grip of control is the first tension we must release, and karma is the great conversation we must join, then our next step leads us to the most radical, most liberating concept in all of Buddhism. The understanding of no self, or anatta. This teaching is often the most unsettling to the modern mind, which is entirely conditioned to believe in a solid, singular, enduring entity at the core of our being, a fixed I that remains constant beneath the changing surface of thoughts and feelings. We operate under the assumption that I am a noun, a static identity, a permanent center of command. But the Zen masters invite us to look closer, to turn the light of awareness inward, and to ask the most profound question. Where is this self? Where is the I that I claim to be? When we search for this fixed, permanent I, the one who was born, who has memories, who makes decisions, we cannot find it. We find only a vast, constant flow of experiences, perceptions, feelings, and volitions. We find motion, not stillness. We find verbs, not a noun. Imagine yourself standing by a wide, magnificent river. You name this continuous flow the river. You can talk about the river, you can point to the river, and you can swim in the river. But if you try to take a bucket and catch the river, you will only ever capture a fleeting moment of water. The water you hold in the bucket is not the river. The river is the movement, the flow, the endless passage of water from the mountains to the sea. The river is a process, not a static object. Your idea of a fixed I, we are simply clinging to a temporary configuration of these 5 processes, mistaking the wave for the whole ocean. We are trying to hold one bucket of water and insist that it is the entire river. This clinging creates immense suffering. Why? Because the very nature of these 5 processes is change, anicca. The body ages, Feelings dissolve, thoughts vanish, and awareness shifts focus. When our fixed, rigid idea of self meets the fluid, ever-changing nature of reality, there is a clash. The rigid structure breaks, and the pain we feel is the disappointment of the ego that wanted to remain solid and safe. The journey to know self is not a loss. It is the great unburdening. It is the realization that you have been carrying the impossible burden of maintaining a fixed identity in a fluid universe. When you realize the self is just a flow, you can finally put that heavy burden down. Look at your hand now, or feel the gentle pressure of your head on the pillow. The atoms that make up your skin were once stardust. They will soon be recycled back into the soil and the air. The cells are replaced constantly. The body you inhabit now is not the body of 10 years ago. It is a new body, a new flow. And the mind, the thoughts that troubled you yesterday are already gone. The joy you felt last week has been replaced by tonight's quietude. Where is the fixed I that experienced them all? That I is simply the story woven around the passing events. Another simple, beautiful metaphor is the flame of a lamp. When you look at a flame, it appears to be one continuous, enduring object. You can say, that is the lamp flame. But science tells us that the fuel molecules burning in that moment are instantly consumed and replaced by new molecules. There is no single particle of fire that lasts more than a millisecond. The flame is not a thing. It is a sustained event, a process of continuous combustion. Your life is the sustained event. It is a continuous combustion of awareness, feeling, and intention. The mistake is clinging to. Trying to control is the very mechanism of control itself. The whole system relaxes. There is no fixed who that needs to be fixed. Zen practice, therefore, is not about finding yourself. It is about losing yourself in the flow of the present moment. It is the practice of sitting without agenda until the clinging mind exhausts itself and the illusion of separation dissolves. The master, in their deep realization of no self, does not become detached or cold. Quite the opposite. They become deeply, intimately connected. This is the great paradox. When the wave understands that it is not a separate entity fighting against the current, but a temporary manifestation of the ocean itself, it loses its fear and finds its profound power. The realization of anatta leads directly to the core Buddhist insight of emptiness, or shunyata. This word, too, is often misinterpreted as nihilism or nothingness. But emptiness is not the absence of existence. It is the absence of independent, inherent existence. It means that nothing exists purely on its own, fixed and separate. Everything is empty of an isolated, separate self. The chair you sit on is empty of chairness because it depends on wood, metal, a carpenter, your need to sit, and the concept of chair in your mind. If you take away all those dependent factors, the chair vanishes. You are empty of selfness because you depend on your parents, the air you breathe, the food you eat, the light that allows you to see, and the language that allows you to name yourself. Take away those dependent factors, and the self you claim to be also vanishes. This emptiness is not terrifying. It is liberating and expansive. If everything is empty of a separate self, then everything is profoundly interconnected. The wave realizes, I am not only the wave, I am the entire ocean manifested as a temporary wave. This is the shift from loneliness to connection. The anxious self, believing it is a separate, isolated entity, feels perpetually threatened and alone. The liberated self, understanding it is a flowing process within an infinite flow, feels supported, held, and fundamentally connected to everything. The mountains, the wind, to the great, unformed, magnificent reality of pure process. You are the empty river, and the river is perfect. The infinite web of interbeing. We have loosened the frantic grip of control and explored the intimate conversation of karma, finding that the self we once clung to is not a fixed, separate island, but a flowing river. This realization of no self naturally leads us to the next profound teaching, the understanding that everything in the universe is fundamentally, exquisitely connected. This is the truth of interbeing. The Buddha gave us the teaching of dependent origination, or padakasamuppada. On the surface, this is a complex philosophical map describing the chain of causation that gives rise to suffering. But in the quiet, simple language of Zen, it is merely the recognition that this is because that is. This arises because that arises. This ceases because that ceases. It is the universal law of A depends on B, and B depends on C, and C depends on everything else. Nothing stands alone. Nothing is separate. Everything is woven into an infinite, living tapestry of existence. To truly understand interbeing, we must look away from the dramatic and look toward the simple, mundane elements of our life right now. Consider the gentle act of breathing. You inhale. Where does the air come from? It comes from the trees and the oceans, which exhale the oxygen you require. It comes from the subtle churning of the planet's atmosphere. The air you just drew into your lungs was recently floating over a distant mountain, touched by the sea, and passed through the leaves of a towering redwood in a forest you have never seen. You exhale. The carbon dioxide you release is immediately taken up by the small houseplant in the corner of your room, or by the grass in the field outside, which gratefully absorbs it and returns oxygen to the common air. Your breath is not yours. It is a continuous, sacred exchange. You are literally breathing the life of the planet, and the planet is breathing your life. In the space of a single breath, the boundary actually a complex, sensitive reflection of the entire web of conditions that came together to create this very moment. When you understand this, the mood loses its power to define you as a fixed, sad person. It becomes simply a delicate, temporary color woven into the tapestry of the whole. The Zen masters use this awareness of interbeing to deepen compassion. If nothing is separate, then how can you truly harm another without harming yourself? The boundary between self and other is revealed to be a mere mental construct, a line drawn in the flowing water of existence. In the tradition of Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, the term interbeing was coined to make this teaching profoundly accessible. He taught us to see the cloud in the sheet of paper. When you look at a piece of paper, you see only the paper. But if you look deeply, you see the tree that was required to make the pulp, the cloud that provided the rain to nourish the tree, the sun that provided the light for the tree to grow, the logger who cut down the tree, the food the logger ate. Without the cloud, the tree cannot grow. Without the tree, there is no paper. The cloud and the paper are interdependent. They are. The moment we see the cloud in the paper, we can no longer waste the paper or treat it without respect, because to disrespect the paper is to disrespect the sun, the cloud, the tree, and the logger. This insight transforms our relationship with everything, from the smallest object to the most difficult person. Consider a person in your life who causes you pain or frustration. The controlling mind sees this person as a fixed, independent source of trouble, a separate, hostile entity. This perception allows us to judge, reject, and distance ourselves.
But when you apply the lens of interbeing, you begin to see the cloud in that person. You see that their anger is empty of a separate inherent existence. Their anger depends on their fear, which depends on their past trauma, which depends on the fear and trauma passed down by their own parents, who were conditioned by the culture and suffering of their time. The person is not the anger. They are the field upon which the anger is currently blooming, and that field is connected to your own. This doesn't mean you must accept harmful behavior, but it profoundly changes.
Quiet, centered breath instead of a reactive shout. You break a chain of conditioned suffering that might have stretched back generations. When you offer genuine, non-judgmental attention to your own inner anxiety, that act of self-care immediately sends ripples of stability into the collective mind, making the world slightly more peaceful for everyone. The Zen monk's work in the remote monastery is not just for his own benefit. The deep stillness and awareness cultivated there become a subtle, pervasive energy, a kind of spiritual oxygen that seeps into the world, raising the consciousness of the entire system. You do not need to be a monk on a mountain to practice this. Your simple presence is the practice. In your quiet space now, feel the deep truth of your own interconnectedness. Feel the clothes on your body. They are connected to the cotton farmer, the spinning machine, the factory worker, and the person who bought them for you. Feel the surface you are lying on. It is connected to the earth, the trees, and the long, slow process of geological time. Feel the life within your body. Your health is interconnected with the microbial life in your gut, the water in your blood, and the air in your lungs. You are not a solitary vessel. You are a living, breathing ecosystem woven into a larger one. The practice of inner being dissolves the illusion of separation that causes loneliness. We often feel isolated, burdened by the heavy belief that we must figure everything out and carry every weight alone. This feeling of being a separate island is the ultimate form of suffering. But inner being whispers a gentle truth. You are not alone because you are not separate. The universe is not something external that is acting upon you. The universe is something internal that is acting as you. You are the universe expressing itself in this specific, temporary, magnificent form. To rest in inner being is to realize that the fundamental reality is support. The air supports your breath, the earth supports your body, the light supports your vision, the water supports your life. You are literally sustained by the entire cosmos in every single moment. The need to desperately control beautiful tapestry. You cannot be pulled out or cast aside, because if one strand is pulled, the entire tapestry shivers. You are held, you are connected, you are the flow. Rest now in this deep, unquestionable belonging. Noble silence and the rising truth. As we settle deeper into the quietude of interbeing, recognizing that we are an interwoven part of a single, continuous flow, we encounter one of the most powerful and counterintuitive practices of the monastic life: noble silence. In our noisy, external world, silence is often viewed as a gap to be filled, a vacuum of meaning, or a sign of awkwardness. We fear the quiet because we fear the content of our own minds. We keep the television on, the music playing, and the endless conversation running, all as a means of constant distraction from the deep, restless core we carry. But in the Zen tradition, silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is a profound presence. Noble silence is a radical act of pausing the performance. We spend our waking hours engaged in a perpetual performance of the self. We perform competence for our colleagues, stability for our family, and confidence for the world. Even our internal monologue is often a rehearsal for the next performance or a critique of the last one. We talk, think, and react because the ego, the fragile illusion of a fixed self, feels it must constantly justify its existence, prove its value, and maintain its precarious control. When we enter noble silence, we step off the stage. We refuse to participate in the drama. We give the ego no lines, no stage directions, and no audience. What happens in that sudden, profound stillness? At first, there is a riot. The mind, starved of its usual distractions, turns inward and begins to complain, argue, demand, and analyze with a heightened intensity. This initial turbulence is not a sign of failure. It is the natural consequence of stepping away from the wheel of distraction. We are finally quiet enough to hear the noise we have been carrying all along. The silence serves as a deep, resonant them. We sit with the rising truth, offering it only the vast, open space of awareness. We do not engage with the content of the memory or the story of the fear. We simply acknowledge the energy of the feeling. Ah, this is sadness. This is fear. This is the energy of resistance. By maintaining silence, we deny the ego the tools it needs to re-engage with the performance. The fear cannot find words to justify itself. The anger cannot find a target to lash out at. The grief cannot find a narrative to spin itself into despair. In this space, the emotion, deprived of the fuel of story and reaction, simply runs its natural course. It flares brightly, and then, finding no resistance, it begins to dissolve back into the silence from which it came. This is how deep, genuine healing happens, not by intellectualizing our pain, but by outsitting it. We let the emotions process us rather than trying to process them. The great Zen poet Ryokan, living in his solitary hut on the mountainside, found profound clarity in this quietude. He saw the simplicity of silence as the most eloquent teacher. His life was the ultimate renunciation of the performance. He spent his time weaving baskets, writing simple poems, and playing hide-and-seek with the village children. He made no demands on the world and required no recognition. His being was his practice. His life illustrates the transformation of our relationship with speech. When we are caught in the ego's performance, our speech is often reactive. We speak because we are afraid of the silence, because we want to be right, because we want to fill a gap, or because we feel compelled to defend our self-image. This reactive speech creates noise, misunderstanding, and more karma. It is often the noise of separation. But when we rest in noble silence, and when we are eventually moved to speak, our words arise from a different source, a place of clarity. This speech is unhurried, essential, and carries the weight of presence. The master's words are few, but they carry immense resonance, like the solitary chime of a bronze bell. They do not seek to dominate or manipulate. They seek only to point toward the truth already present in the listener, shutting down the verbal, analytical mind, so that the deeper, quiet, intuitive wisdom, the wisdom of the heart, can finally speak. As you lie here, moving toward the deep silence of sleep, let this practice inform your rest. The mind may still be churning, planning the next day, or replaying the past day's tape. This is your cue to enter noble silence, not of the voice, but of the inner commentary. Do not try to stop the thoughts. That is just another form of noise. Instead, gently refuse to add your commentary to the thoughts. Let the thought of tomorrow's meeting arise, but do not allow the inner voice to add. And I must remember to say this, and I hope they agree, and what if I fail? Just let the raw, unedited thought drift by. The moment you cease to argue with your own mind,
to criticize your own feelings, or to narrate your own experience, you have entered the deepest form of noble silence. In this profound quiet, a tenderness is revealed. Beneath the endless clamor of your thoughts, beneath the constant, protective chatter, there is a vast, untouched reservoir of stillness. This stillness is not empty or cold. It is the awareness that holds the entire universe of your experience. When you rest in this quiet awareness, the subtle energy that was being used for the performance, for planning, defending, and worrying, is gently reclaimed. This energy is now available for deep, genuine rest. You become less of a tightly wound spring and more of a soft, open vessel. Let the words you hear become like the sound of a distant stream, present, soothing, but carrying no urgent demand for your engagement. In this deep, continuous, quiet watching, we find that the true self is not the noise of the mind, but the open, silent space in which the noise occurs. The deepest peace is not achieved when the mind is finally silenced, but when we realize that the silence was always present, just obscured by the sound. Rest in the vast, open space of the unedited moment. Let the rising truths arise, not as problems to be fixed, but as messengers to be gently acknowledged and released. This is the deep, cleansing power of noble silence. This is the truth that rises when the performance finally stops. The practice of right effort,
The extreme of sloth and avoidance, laziness, and the extreme of frantic overstriving, control. The Buddha famously taught this principle using the analogy of a lute or a stringed instrument. He advised the monk Sona, who was trying so hard to attain awakening that he was wearing himself out. If the strings of the lute are tuned too tightly, the music is harsh, and the strings might break. If the strings are tuned too loosely, there is no music at all, only a dull, flapping sound. But if the strings are tuned precisely, neither too tight nor too loose, the instrument produces a sound that is deep, resonant, and beautiful. Right effort is the act of tuning the strings of your own life to this point of harmonious resonance. It is not about forcing the music, but about creating the perfect conditions for the music to naturally arise. The true effort is the relentless, gentle pursuit of balance. This balance is rooted in a profound principle of sincerity without struggle. Sincerity means we are honest about our intentions, dedicated to purification, and committed to showing up for the practice, whatever it may be, meditation, compassion, or simply being present. Struggle means we are fighting against the reality of the present moment, resisting what is, or forcing an outcome that is not yet ripe. Right effort is the sincerity of showing up, combined with the humility of letting go of the struggle. It is the wisdom of the gardener, not the warrior. The gardener does not fight the weeds. They simply remove them skillfully, one by one. And they do not stand over the seeds, shouting for them to grow. They simply provide the right conditions, nourishment, water, and light, and then trust in the inherent life force of the seed. The effort is in the careful tending, not the forcing. This gardening of the mind is often described as the fourfold effort, 4 intentional acts of volition that guide our energy. 1. Preventing unwholesome states from arising. This is the proactive wisdom of recognizing the subtle beginnings of negativity. It is the choice to step away from a toxic conversation before anger takes root. It is the awareness arisen. This is the cultivation of the good, the intentional watering of seeds like kindness, patience, gratitude, and peace. It is the deliberate act of seeking out the quiet spaces, reading the gentle wisdom, and speaking the kind word. This is the effort of creation, actively building the mental environment we wish to inhabit. 4.
maintaining wholesome states that have arisen. This is the effort of stability and presence. When peace arises, we often take it for granted, letting our attention wander until the peace dissolves. This final effort is the gentle commitment to stay present with the joy, to savor the stillness, and to remember the clarity. It is the steady hand that keeps the string perfectly tuned. This requires the effort of remembrance. Notice that in all four efforts, there is no mention of violence or strain. The energy is one of conscious, skillful, and very gentle redirection. This is the definition of effort that does not fatigue, it sustains. The shift from wrong effort to right effort changes our entire relationship with the flow of life. Wrong effort is like trying to move through water by pushing the water away from you. You create enormous splash, noise, and turbulence, and you expend vast amounts of energy, only to move very slowly, because you are fighting the very medium that is meant to support you. Right effort is like the gentle, deep, and mindful stroke of the swimmer who has mastered the water. They move with the water, using its resistance to propel themselves forward. Their movements are graceful, efficient, and surprisingly quiet. They travel far, but they do not return exhausted. They return refreshed because they have been flowing with reality, not against it. This mastery leads us to the critical teaching of holding plans lightly. The person governed by wrong effort creates a rigid, detailed plan and clings to it desperately, believing any deviation is a failure. They are trying to impose a linear, fixed structure onto the circular, ever-changing nature of existence. When life inevitably shifts, a circumstance changes, a person disappoints, a body fails, the rigid mind snaps and suffering follows. Right effort, rooted in the rest, and skillfully fixes the bootlace. The energy is shifted from resisting the obstacles to engaging skillfully with the reality of the path. The goal remains, but the effort is in the continuous, gentle readjustment to the immediate conditions. The highest form of this effort is the effort of presence. It requires an immense yet quiet commitment to stop distracting ourselves and to simply show up well for the single moment we inhabit. We think of effort as doing, but the deepest effort is in the being, the effort to be still, to be present, and to be non-judgmental. Consider the effort involved in deep listening. When another person speaks, or even when your own heart whispers a truth, the mind wants to jump ahead, interrupt, or formulate a response. The effort of deep listening is the gentle, repeated refusal to do this, the discipline to keep the attention fully, openly, and quietly present with the sound until it is complete. This is right effort. It is a stillness that is active, not passive. Or consider the effort of non-judgment. The mind is a machine for comparison and critique. To watch a thought of judgment arise and to deliberately, softly withhold the confirmation of that judgment, to let the thought dissolve without lending it your identity, is an act of tremendous, silent strength. This gentle refusal to engage in internal violence is right effort, and it is profoundly restorative. In the end, right effort is the practice that makes the energy of your life sustainable. Wrong effort, fighting, straining, clinging, is an energetic deficit. It is constantly draining because it requires you to defy the law of impermanence. You are constantly building a dam against the unstoppable river of change. Right effort, tuning, tending, accepting, is an energetic surplus. It connects you back to the great, supportive flow of interbeing. When you stop pushing against the stream carries you.
Your actions become less about forcing and more about aligning. This alignment brings with it a quality of deep, abiding ease. The master is not lazy, but their movements are marked by a deep absence of internal perfect, calm environment where rest can naturally bloom. You are trusting the inherent wisdom of your body to take over when the mind finally relinquishes its grip. Let go of the force. Embrace the flow. Let the gentle adjustment of your awareness be the last, most peaceful effort of the day. Samsara's rhythm and the tapestry. We have practiced right effort, the gentle, sustained tuning of the mind. Now we turn our awareness to the immense context in which this effort takes place. Samsara. Samsara is the ancient Buddhist term for the cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth, the relentless, ceaseless flow of conditioned existence. For the hurried mind, samsara can sound like a frightening trap, a wheel of suffering from which we desperately need to escape. This view often turns our spiritual practice into a struggle, a fight to escape life rather than an embrace of it. But the Zen view, the view cultivated in the deep stillness of the monastery, softens this perception. Samsara is not a punitive mechanism. It is simply the rhythm. It is the eternal, cyclical dance of reality itself. It is not a mistake to be fixed, but a song to be danced to, a process to be accepted. Imagine the universe not as a straight line from problem to solution, but as a vast, magnificent spiral. We constantly experience cycles, the cycle of the seasons, the cycle of the day and night, the cycle of the breath, and the cycle of the heart, the rhythmic expansion of joy followed by the inevitable contraction of difficulty. When we fight samsara, we are fighting the rhythm of our own existence. We try to grasp the high note and hold it there forever, terrified of the descent. We try to deny the low note, viewing it as a failure, a disruption, or a sign that we have somehow broken the music. But the music cannot exist without the silence between the notes. The rhythm cannot exist without the rise and the fall. The highest peaks require the deepest valleys to be seen at all. This is the profound wisdom of seeing samsara as a rhythm. The low points are not failures. They are the necessary depth for the subsequent expansion would be shallow and unsustainable. The Zen masters lived entirely within this rhythm, viewing every hardship, the cold of winter, the scarcity of food, the pain of long sitting, as a condition for awakening. They were not seeking to escape the cycle. They were seeking to become fully present within every phase of the cycle. A beautiful metaphor for this integration is the tapestry. Our lives are not a series of broken pieces that must be glued back together. Instead, life is a vast, continuous tapestry woven on the loom of time. When you look closely at one single thread on the reverse side of the tapestry, a patch of dark, knotted wool, or a section that seems tangled and confused, you might think this section is a mistake. It looks messy, unresolved, and ugly in its isolation. This single dark thread is your current struggle, your unresolved grief, or your habitual anxiety. But when you step back, turn the tapestry over, and look at the whole, you realize that the dark knotted wool was the only thread that could provide the profound shadow needed to make the luminous gold thread next to it truly shine. The tangled section was the necessary backing that gave support and structure to the delicate image of a distant tree. Every moment of your life, even the ones you wish to discard, are essential colors and textures in the completed design. The lightness is defined by the darkness. The rest is defined by the struggle. The clarity is defined by the confusion. To reject the darkness, the knot, or the difficult thread
is to reject the perfection of the entire tapestry. When we stop viewing our difficult moments as isolated mistakes and start viewing them as essential knots in the larger fabric, our perspective shifts completely. We stop fighting the dark colors. We begin to see the beauty of the contrast, the depth that comes only from the inclusion of all experiences. This perspective is fundamentally liberating because it dissolves the need for constant editing. The controlling mind is constantly trying to edit the past, arguing with the present, and pre-editing the future. It is trying to make the tapestry look like a blank sheet of white silk, smooth, uniform, and utterly lifeless.
Chinese farmer who owned a magnificent horse. One day, the horse ran away. The neighbors gathered to console the farmer, saying, "What terrible luck." The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A week later, the horse returned, bringing with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors came back, now exclaiming, "What wonderful fortune." The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The farmer's son, attempting to tame one of the wild horses, fell off and broke his leg. The neighbors came again, this time lamenting, "What a tragic misfortune." The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The following month, the emperor's army came through the village, conscripting all able-bodied young men for a distant, dangerous war. The farmer's son, because of his broken leg, was spared. The neighbors returned, now declaring, "What astonishing luck." The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." This simple repetition holds the entire teaching of the samsara rhythm. The farmer lived in perfect harmony with the flow of existence. He understood that any event, viewed in isolation, cannot be definitively labeled as good or bad. It is merely a moment in the rhythm, a single thread in the vast tapestry. What looks like great fortune now may be the cause of future difficulty, and what looks like great difficulty now may be the essential condition for future peace. The farmer's calm response, "Maybe," is the ultimate expression of non-clinging and non-resistance. He refused to attach the labels of good or bad to the changing current of his life. He simply trusted the unfolding. He trusted the rhythm. As you lie here, resting on the quiet wisdom of the night, examine your own life with the farmer's patient eyes. What story are you telling yourself is a definitive good thing that you must cling to? What story are you telling yourself is a definitive bad thing that you must escape? Can you gently offer the response, "Maybe," to both of these tight stories? The job you love now may be a source of strain later. Maybe. The anxiety you feel now may be the sensitivity that allows for great insight later. Maybe. Allowing the maybe to settle into your heart creates a profound spaciousness. Journey, resting in the rhythm of samsara, trusting the deep intelligence of the universe. Yet, the mind often asks, if everything is impermanent, if all forms are destined to dissolve, how can I ground my heart? What is the reliable center when the world is ceaseless change? The answer is found in one of the most profound and beautiful acts of Buddhist wisdom, the creation and dissolution of the Tibetan sand mandala. This ancient practice is not merely an art form. It is a direct, tangible teaching on the nature of reality, and it offers the most potent medicine for the heart that fears loss. Imagine yourself in a quiet, sun-drenched temple. For days, perhaps weeks, a team of monks has been engaged in a single, meticulous act of creation. They are building a mandala, a cosmic diagram, a sacred map of the universe, often representing a purified, enlightened realm known as a Buddha field. The materials are simple. Millions of tiny, brightly colored grains of sand, crushed from semi-precious stones. The tools are even simpler. Thin, funnel-shaped metal instruments called chakpurs.
The monk holds the chakpur over the designated spot and gently runs a metal rod across the corrugated surface of the funnel. This causes the sand to trickle out in a perfect, continuous stream, a whisper of color, that falls onto the base. The precision is staggering. The monks work for hours, sometimes without moving, holding their breath to avoid disturbing a grain. Every line, every shape, every color combination holds specific, sacred meaning. The effort is intense, sustained, and purely devotional. It is an act of right effort in its highest form, sincerity without struggle. The monk is not thinking of the finished product. They are entirely immersed in the now, focusing solely on the perfect execution of the single grain of sand being placed at this single moment. This creation is, itself, a continuous, deep meditation. The final form of the mandala is breathtaking, a perfect geometric city of light, color, and symmetry, representing the absolute perfection and clarity of the enlightened mind. It is fixed, whole, and beautiful, the ultimate symbol.
Moving body of water, a river, a stream, or a lake, and pour the sand back into the current. The colored dust is dispersed by the water, carried away, and ultimately returned to the earth. This ritual of dissolution is the profound, active acceptance of impermanence. It is the visual teaching that form fades, but essence remains. The teaching is this: the value of the mandala was never in the completed form itself. If the value had been in the fixed form, the monks would be gripped by terror and sorrow as they swept it away. Instead, they are calm, centered, and deeply peaceful. Why? Because the true, enduring value of the process was not the sand structure, but the energy that was generated during its making, the discipline that refined the mind, the concentration that stilled the thoughts, the humility that allowed the hands to work perfectly without seeking credit, the presence that infused every single moment of creation. That essence, the consciousness, the skill, the pure intention, the karma, does not vanish when the sand is swept away. It is absorbed back into the monk's heart, refined and strengthened. The form is temporary. The spiritual residue is permanent. We're all constantly building personal mandalas. Your relationship with a loved one is a mandala, a beautiful, complex form built over years with immense attention, shared effort, and precise vulnerability. But that form is impermanent. Illness, distance, or death will eventually sweep the sand away. Your career, your reputation, your health, your home, these are all exquisite, complex mandalas. You dedicate years of intense effort and focus to building them perfectly. You cling to the fixed form, terrified of the day the brush of change will come and sweep them away. But the mandala principle teaches us to shift our focus completely. When your relationship changes, the love and vulnerability you cultivated, the essence, remain in your heart. You have been refined by the process. When your career ends, the discipline, the knowledge, and the character you developed, the essence, remain, enriching the next phase of your life. When your body changes or declines, the gratitude for the moments of health and the wisdom of its limitations, the essence, deep but in the awareness that witnessed the creation, accepts the dissolution, and watches the dust float on the river. That awareness is your unchanging center. It is the unshakable ground beneath the shifting surface of the world. This principle is the ultimate guide for holding difficulty in context. When you are suffering, when your personal mandala has been suddenly swept away by a wave of misfortune, it feels like the end of all things. The mind is fixated on the beautiful, vanished form. But the mandala wisdom asks you to step back and look at the whole ceremony. It reminds you that the moment of dissolution is part of the sacred ceremony itself. It is not an error. It is the climax. Your current difficulty, the loss, the confusion, the dark thread, this is the sweeping. It is painful, yes, but it is serving the function of releasing your attachment to a fixed, temporary idea of how things should be. It is forcing you to internalize the true lasting gifts, resilience, compassion, and the fundamental knowledge of impermanence. The form fades, but the essence remains. And the essence, the consciousness that was refined during the effort, is now free to be carried by the river of life to create the next beautiful, temporary form. As you lie here, feel the comfort in this truth. Let the mind stop desperately trying to rebuild the mandalas of yesterday. Let go of the need to cling to the perfect forms of your past successes or even the perfect form of your hoped-for future. All of life is a continuous ceremony of creation and release. Embrace the effort, for the effort refines your spirit. But embrace the dissolution, for the dissolution liberates your spirit. You are the awareness that guides the hand placing the sand, and you are the vast river that accepts the dust. You are the stillness that precedes the creation and the silence that follows the release. Rest in that spacious, unchanging awareness now. Let the fear of loss dissolve with the sand. The truest part of you, the essence, the pure, luminous presence is untouched, untroubled, and utterly safe. The foundation of self-compassion. We have allowed the external forms to dissolve with the sand of the mandala, finding our true center in the unchanging nature.
Compassion is the most radical form of discipline. The practice of self-compassion, or metta, loving kindness, directed inward, is the discipline to stay when it hurts, to soften when you want to run, and to forgive when the inner voice turns sharp. It is the willingness to be fully present with your own suffering, without judgment, condemnation, or a desperate need to fix it. If you observe a great Zen master, their presence is not marked by harsh self-criticism. It is marked by a deep, unwavering gentleness. This gentleness is not weakness. It is the ultimate expression of internal strength. It is the peace that comes from having ended the internal war against oneself. Imagine you are standing on the edge of a vast, difficult terrain, the terrain of your own inner life. The controlling mind tells you to cross this terrain by beating yourself into submission, forcing yourself through the pain. This is the path of resistance, which only leads to exhaustion and resentment. Self-compassion, however, is the act of bringing a soft, warm light to the terrain. It is the wisdom of saying, "This path is difficult. My heart is hurting right now. It is understandable that I feel afraid, and I will meet this fear with the same kindness I would offer a dear friend." This is the great, powerful secret of the path. You cannot generate true, lasting compassion for others until you have first established a reservoir of non-judgmental kindness within your own heart. The inner peace you seek is not the absence of difficult feelings. It is the presence of a kind awareness that holds those feelings tenderly. Consider the metaphor of a child learning to walk. The child stumbles and falls constantly. A compassionate parent does not yell, criticize the child's lack of coordination, or demand immediate perfection. Instead, the parent rushes over, gently picks up the child, kisses the scraped knee, and then quietly encourages them to try again. The entire episode is held within an atmosphere of love and acceptance. This secure foundation allows the child to feel safe enough to fall again.
May I be kind to myself in this hurt? What can I learn from this experience? This statement is fluid, accepting, and immediately opens the door to right effort. Self-compassion is an act of deep clarity. It allows you to see your shortcomings without having to weave them into your core identity. In your quiet moments of rest, this practice becomes very simple. When an anxiety or a self-critical thought arises, do not fight it. Instead, treat it as a suffering friend who has just entered the room. Acknowledge the suffering. Silently name the pain. This is a moment of self-criticism. This is a moment of fear. Acknowledge the humanity. Remind yourself that this suffering is not an isolated flaw, but a part of the shared human experience. All beings feel self-doubt. All humans make mistakes. I am not alone in this. Offer a gentle response. Place a hand on your heart or your belly and offer a quiet, simple phrase. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the kindness I need. This practice shifts your energy immediately. It changes the nature of your presence from one of internal conflict to one of gentle holding. The power of self-compassion is that it dissolves the need for constant external affirmation. When you are rooted in this inner kindness, you no longer need the world to constantly praise you, validate you, or prove your worth. Your worth is no longer dependent on your achievements, your appearance, your productivity, or anyone else's opinion. As the ancient texts suggest, every being possesses Buddha nature, an innate, luminous, untainted clarity at the core of their being. Self-compassion is simply the act of seeing and honoring that already present clarity, even when it is momentarily obscured by the clouds of worry or self-doubt. You are not trying to create worth. You are simply remembering the worth that is already your birthright. The master jeweler does not look at a piece of rough, uncut stone and complain about its imperfections. They see the potential for security you will ever know. Trusting the deep wisdom. We arrive now at the final quiet sanctuary of our journey, having established a foundation built not on external control, but on inner alignment. We have seen the fluidity of the self, the sacred rhythm of all things, and the sustaining power of gentle compassion. Our final step is the most simple, yet the most profound, trusting the deep wisdom. This wisdom is not something you must go out and find. It is not a doctrine to be mastered or a secret revealed only after years of struggle. The deep wisdom is the essential, luminous clarity that has been watching and holding the entire process. It is the awareness that is already present, the clear sky behind the passing clouds of worry, planning, and self-doubt. Trust, in the Buddhist sense, is not a naive hope that everything will be easy. It is the quiet, firm conviction that you can meet whatever arises with presence and clarity. It is the trust in your own essential capacity to be aware, to adapt, and to respond skillfully. The controlling mind tries to explain, define, and secure trust with rational proofs. But the deep wisdom of Zen lives in the realm of paradox, where two seemingly opposite truths exist simultaneously, and the mind must soften its rigid logic to grasp them both. We are asked to hold these gentle paradoxes. You are no self, a flowing process utterly empty of a fixed identity. Yet you are entirely responsible for the intentions, karma, you generate. You are empty, yet your actions matter completely. Everything is impermanent, destined to dissolve like the sand mandala. Yet the effort and attention you bring to the present moment is the only thing that truly lasts. The form vanishes, yet the consciousness is refined forever. Life is filled with suffering, dukkha, the inevitable friction of the cycle. Yet the fundamental nature of existence, Buddha nature, is bliss and perfection. The wave is turbulent, yet the ocean is utterly calm. To trust the deep wisdom is to allow these paradoxes to soften the mind. When logic meets the impossible, it has two choices: to break in frustration or to surrender into a vast. Are invited now to become like water, yielding, flowing, and utterly present to the container of the night. Do not try to force yourself into a fixed shape of the perfect sleeper. Do not try to hold on to the clarity of this reflection. Simply allow yourself to flow. When a thought arises, let the water of your awareness gently move around it, neither fighting it nor clinging to it. The final act of trust is the simplest, the recognition that you are already where you need to be. The search for peace is often the greatest barrier to peace. We believe we must travel to a different inner state, a different level of understanding, or a different tomorrow. But the Master knows that the wisdom you have sought tonight has always been here, residing in the luminous quietude of your own essential awareness. The work is complete. The teachings are absorbed. The only thing left to do is rest in the gentle knowledge that you are a part of a vast, intelligent, and profoundly supportive whole. You do not have to hold it all together. You are already held. Let your body sink entirely into the support beneath you. Let your breath deepen into the natural rhythm of the earth. Let your mind dissolve into the deep, spacious silence. Rest now in the safety of impermanence, the alignment of karma, the freedom of no self, and the unwavering discipline of self-compassion. All is well.